Welcome to the Enneagram 2.0 podcast. I'm Beatrice Chestnut.
And I'm Uranio Paes.
And today we are talking to a very special person who is a sexual 3, and her name is Jennifer Culverhouse. Thank you for being here, Jennifer.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Jennifer is an advanced student of ours at S3Ep Enneagram Academy. Jennifer's a brilliant person, and we believe she has quite an interesting story of going up a little bit on levels of awareness, as we describe them, as a sexual 3, right, Jennifer? And at the same time as all of us, she also has a lot to describe about 3 personality in itself. And it takes not only courage, but also a good degree of self-observation to be able to talk about all that. So Thank you for helping us, Jennifer.
I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, so we'll want to ask you mainly about your growth path. But first, I want to say, I think it's the inner work journey using the Enneagram or any path, but especially understanding the growth journey through the Enneagram can be the hardest for type 3s. And this is because our society and we're Jennifer and I live in the United States. American culture in particular, is a 3 culture. And so when I just kind of want to say the degree of difficulty of this growth journey might be a little bit more in the US, a little bit higher level of difficulty than it is for other types and other places. Not that all types don't have a hard growth journey. They do. But I just want to say that because I think the rewards of the 3 of life here in the United States kind of match up perfectly with the type 3 personality. And so I just want to say that there's a degree of difficulty here, which is one of the reasons why we wanted Jennifer to tell her story. So Jennifer, maybe it'd be good if you started off just telling us a little bit about yourself. What have you done? I hate to ask a 3 what your career is about, but I think it would be interesting for people to know that. Just tell us a little bit about you and by way of introduction.
So I live in Houston, Texas. And since I can remember, I've always been an entrepreneur, even as a little kid. My absolute favorite time of year was summertime when my Mimi / grandmother, who lived next door, would be getting ready for her garage sale. Which is, when you get all the things that you don't necessarily want anymore, put it out, and people come by and buy it. And I would get so excited to merchandise the garage sale, price everything, greet all the customers, and I was probably 5 years old.
Wow.
But it was the best time of my life. And so fast forward, I've always loved the beauty industry. I've always said, I think I was an entrepreneur first and then just happened to love the beauty industry and went into the cosmetology world and opened up our own salon company and have been very successful at it. Expanded to 5 locations here in the U.S. And really built a super successful business and grew a team from 4 people to over 60 people.
Wow.
So that's kind of been my career path.
Wow. So you founded and ran these salons all as part of your cosmetology company. So what was your role in the company?
So in the beginning, I was a stylist.
Mm-hmm.
But I quickly found that I was kind of limited with just being a stylist and having a few people. I'm like, no, I want this to like expand. I want to create I want to create something big. I can do this. And honestly, a lot of those things were really easy and obvious to me and energized me and all the things. So I decided to just continue to expand, and moved away from actually working behind the chair in the salon to kind of being the visionary and operations, all of those types of things to kind of care for the people on the team versus caring for just clients that were coming into the salon.
I see. Right. Beautiful. And so both an entrepreneur and a hairstylist, and then someone who just kind of had had some success and really enjoyed the business aspect, and so grew and grew your company. And I know that when we met you, it was when you came to one of our professional workshops many years ago now, right? Like I know it was before the pandemic. So we met you because you were, coming to learn how to use the Enneagram in your professional practice. So can you tell us maybe a little bit about how you met the Enneagram and how you brought that into your business?
Yeah, it's so crazy. I was just talking about this recently, just how wild all these dots have connected. But my daughter was at university and she was taking a leadership class. And she approached me and said, Mom, we're talking about this personality tool called the Enneagram. And I've got to write a paper on it. And I think you would be really interested in it. It's super fascinating. And I was like, absolutely not. Believe me, I've taken every assessment. Am I a dog or a hawk? Am I, what color am I? What Disney princess? I'm like, I don't need any additional tools to find out how I operate. And so, long story short, she ended up bringing an Enneagram book on a road trip she and I were on. And, I'm kind of thumbing through it as we're on this road trip, going through all the different types. And I'm like, I don't relate to any of these. I just don't connect with any of these. And so it was a really long road trip. So I went back and kind of started going through the Enneagram 3 checklist. And I was like, okay, this is really embarrassing. I wouldn't want, do people really think that about me? Or if I'm honest, I wouldn't say this out loud, but I really do think this way.
Mhm.
And it just kind of hit me in a new way where I was like, oh my gosh, this knows like deep inner diary parts of myself that I'm kind of learning for the first time too. I knew, but I didn't know. And so, of course, Enneagram 3 style, I'm like, I have to learn everything about this to bring it into my company. This is amazing. I instantly wanted to use it with everyone else.
Mm.
And so that's how I came to you guys. And it was. It was kind of crazy, the timing, because my mom had just passed away when I came to the
Mm.
workshop.
Mm.
She had like passed away the week before.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, yeah. Oh, okay, let me get back to business as usual. I need to go to this workshop to learn how, to bring the Enneagram to my team. And so whenever I came to the workshop, it was um, obviously repressing a lot of feelings, and it kind of opened up this new curiosity for me of, wow, this is way deeper and more than what I could have imagined or thought it was going to be, and not just a tool for me to use in business.
Mm. Beautiful.
Yeah. So, Jennifer, I want to make a few comments and to listen from you and from you, B, if you agree, just for the sake of linking what you're saying to things that we usually teach about type 3. I think we heard that your first interest on the Enneagram was like performance for me and others at work, which is a bit typical as a first interest point for threes. And then others, not only you, mostly perhaps because of three, not only sexual three, not only because you're an entrepreneur and have those people working for you. So I think we also heard you say that going behind the chair, you started modeling things for those people, not only the Enneagram, but before, how they should be and more. So that's also, in my view, potentially something typical for threes. And then when finding out your type, like, who should I be? Should I be a three? Should I not be a three? And I just observed that hard types, not only hard types, but mostly hard types, sometimes when in the typing process, they sort of mistake a little bit who they really are for who they should be, or who they, people who would help them with their image, who they should be to help them out with their image. um, and then one last thing, and sorry for talking long, but you said so many interesting things. I've always seen in my career with the Enneagram in business that type 3 people get more motivated when, in a startup phase or in the expansion side of the business, and really not as motivated when the business is sort of in a cruise flight and it's going well, and there are not as many challenges, like the little girl at the grandmother's garage. What would you say? Is this fair enough, or?
Oh my gosh, yes, it's so true. My whole career, kind of my tagline has always been just fake it till you make it. Like I never was just satisfied with, all right, here's the business and let's just let it go. And it was like always thinking about, how can I make this bigger? How can I make this more successful? How can I grow the team even larger? And, it's embarrassing to say this, but before I really kind of started diving into the Enneagram, I thought everyone thought that the way that I did. Or if they didn't, then they weren't very ambitious. And I kind of needed to coach them and motivate them to get even more ambitious. Or, to kind of work even harder, be more goal oriented, trying to motivate and cheerlead people on to be more like that. And I think for the whenever I learned the Enneagram, I was like, oh, not everyone thinks that way. And I remember even asking a question in Enneagram class. This is so embarrassing, but I even asked the question. I was like, so is there like an ideal Enneagram type? And in my mind, I was thinking it's a three. I mean,
Yeah, and
you
yes,
know,
you were on to something, because I think, again, the point of view of, like, American culture, and I think to some degree the West, in the world, 3 is sort of seen as the ideal type, people who work
yes.
really hard, people who care about what things look like and just keep driving for success no matter what, and don't let anything stop them, even if it, starts hurting their work life balance, because they just need to go, go, go and make it better. And like you're saying, I think we're also starting to hear some of the subtype in you, the sexual 3, of like, and I think one of the, it's like a difference in emphasis with the sexual 3, where there's also a focus on making other people be better, almost achieving success through the people that you support and help. And I remember when we met you, that was something that I saw really clearly in you, and that one of the things you would talk about a lot is how to support your employees, how to support the people that you worked with. And one of the, when we would talk about the 3 and how the growth path really involves slowing down and not working as much, it was like, but I have to support all these people, so it wasn't just, that doesn't sound good. I mean, it didn't sound good, but mainly a big reason was because I'm there largely to support all the people that work for me and with me. Can you say a little bit about how you see that, and maybe how it that aspect of wanting to support people might have made your growth as a three that actually needs to stop working so much and supporting people in the ways that you probably did, like what that aspect of it was like for you?
I just felt so responsible. And I just felt like if it's like I was like, I can see your potential. And so I'm just going to do absolutely everything I can do to pour into you, to encourage you, to give you the tools that you need so that you can be successful too. I can see it before you can see it, kind of feeling. And so I it almost makes me sad to even talk about, but I almost felt as responsible for these people on my team, to help them, to grow them, all of those things, almost as much as I felt responsible for raising my children.
Right.
And just, it's up to me. And I can so easily see it, and I can do it. And I was successful in a lot of ways doing that, helping people be able to grow and things. But like I always say, there's always a sacrifice on either side.
Mhm.
And so yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I remember when we met you and did some work with you, I remember that was a big part of it. It's like, well, I'm the leader, I'm the I'm the one that's supporting everyone. I'm the one that's helping everyone. I have to be there for them, and I have a family. I'm also in a way the leader of my family, and I'm there for them, and it's so clear how much you love people. And I think that's not all personality, right? It is that sense of responsibility, and I can't stop doing it. But there's also a lot of heart in there that I think that you was so clear, all along the way from when we met you on, about how much you care about people. So I can imagine, again, I think as threes grow, it can be hard to shift out, because so much in your life is supporting what the personality or the ego wants and what it thinks you should do and do really well and keep doing.
It was almost like I had to be this model, this example for people to look to. So I always had to work the longest hours. I always had to show up and leave whatever I was struggling with at the door, and show up with a smile on my face, almost being this example of, okay, how hard I worked. If I'm sick, I'm still going to show up, and I'm still going to be here to support all of you. And never let them see you sweat. And we got this,
Mm,
And so I just felt like it was almost this badge of honor to even kind of, drop little tidbits of how much I was working, even when I wasn't at work, or, like I wanted people to see me in this certain way of, wow, she's always working, she's, yeah,
yeah.
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 Going to ask you something about this, but a bit more in the blind spot or even shadowy side of it. I'm curious to see what you say. While I believe it's true that threes may be sensitive and interested in people, there is an unconscious motive behind that, which is my own image, my own success, seen by everybody else in a particular way. So there is still a very individualistic stance to that, and it's a lot about me in the end of the day. But do you agree with this or not?
Absolutely. Yes. And if you really kind of dig down in the layers, it's like, yes, I want them to be successful, but if they're successful, then that reflects back on
Mhm.
me and my coaching, the business that I'm providing, the environment that I'm giving, the opportunities, and I think I would get kind of impatient if people weren't getting on board quick enough or if they weren't working hard enough. And, I agree, Uranio, it kind of was all a reflection back on
Right.
me of no, 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 no. We need to look good here. So come on, everybody, get on board and let's be
Yeah.
successful
Yeah, and all
together.
types have shadows like this. It's not only threes. The degree of shadows is about the same, but the kind of shadows change. Now, in terms of relationships that have the origin in this motive, they tend to be a bit more utilitarian. Also, in the sense that relationships are sort of means to an end called success. But would you say this is how it was for you, or not exactly?
And no, yes, definitely. And looking back on it now, just looking back on all my relationships, they were all connected to work. I didn't really have friendships or time for friends that were outside of what I was doing, like my work, my career, everything was attached to that. And I didn't really realize that until recently, probably. And that's been something that's been kind of hard for me to kind of navigate through, of kind of waking up and realizing that. But yeah, all of my relationships, connecting with people, investing in people, and I would have people on my team sometimes that would say to me, Jennifer, I feel like I don't really know
Mm.
you, and I would say, what you see is what you get. Like, of course, this is me, but I think maybe there were some discerning people on my team that could kind of see there was some sort of facade
Mm.
there. But I didn't realize it was
Does this
Right,
have
there.
that
to
that
do with the shape shifting?
Probably because it was so easy for me to turn it on. And I feel like I was pretty much on the majority of the time. And so I would always get really offended when I would read about threes, being fake or superficial or whatever. I'm like, okay, that's so rude. I don't love that. Um, but I guess some people on my team were seeing that, you
Right,
know?
right. Seeing that maybe they weren't seeing a deeper part of you, or you weren't expressing your feelings, or they were just experiencing that sort of work persona that you lived from most of the time, it sounds like. And what about with your family? Do you were you kind of a different person with them, or did the work persona kind of overlap with in your family?
For sure. Of course, like, and this is more based on how I was raised, but, having my own children, I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to provide this childhood for them that, you know, where they feel loved and cared for and all the things. But I think in the process, I remember my daughter, she's the oldest. She was my firstborn. So, of course, as her mom from a very young age, I was putting her in dance. She was 4 years old taking violin lessons. And, I'm like trying to put her in all these kind of performing kind of activities. And bless her heart, she's a social 9. So, the anxiety for her of having to live up to these standards of her mom, was very difficult for her. And then, when my 2 boys came along, it was just, okay, I'm mothering them like a 3, trying to encourage them, motivate them, put them in all the things, school. I remember with my daughter, she was like in 3rd grade, and I was so worked up because she was not in the gifted and talented program. And I went to have a meeting with her teacher, and I was like, okay, why didn't Haley get into the gifted and talented program? And she was like, why does it matter? And and I was like, well, because, and she was like, she's a beautifully amazing, smart girl. It doesn't matter. And I just walked away from that conversation feeling very confused. Like, what? No, we need her to be in the
Right.
elite. So of course, I wanted my kids to have the best of the best childhood, and I think that probably lends to my Enneagram 3 of wanting to be the best mom. But I sacrificed so much of my time with them because work was I've got to achieve this so that you guys can have this amazing childhood. And so yeah, there was definitely a
Makes a
sacrifice
lot
made
of
there.
sense and something we hear from a lot of 3s. Yeah. So, anything you want to say, Uranio, before we ask her a little bit more about the growth path?
Just go ahead and introduce the growth path by saying, so everything was working according to strategy and going so well, and you were being so successful. Why on earth did you want to change? And what made you change? What was the trigger?
Yeah, and how did you change
Hmm.
after you learned the Enneagram? Like, how did you start to see yourself at a deeper level through your Enneagram work or experience yourself? Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if it happens this way for everyone, but I don't think I necessarily chose the change. It's like the change happened to me in a very awful feeling way. But I remember it was in 2017, and we had a series of events happen that were all connected and related to our business. We had a major hurricane come through, shut down our businesses for a couple of weeks. So all of the staff were like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Looking to me. And then we had one of our amazing young women that worked in one of our locations was killed tragically in a car accident
Wow.
a few weeks later. And then, a few months later, we had a major walkout in our company where a lot of people left. Now I see that as major rejection feeling on my end of all these people leaving and then talking poorly and all the things. And at that same time, in that same year, my son, I found him um, in and had to call 911 to
Whoa.
save his life. And and the ambulance came, everything, all the neighbors were outside, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this can't be happening. And and I remember sitting in my car, and my husband was sitting in the passenger seat, and I was sitting in my car in my driveway, and I'm just sobbing. And I said, I just want to drive and keep driving and never come back. I'm like, I'm so tired of saying, I got this, I got this, I got this. And no one around me is saying, no, let us get this for you. Let us help you. Let us support, let us help take care of you. I just feel like I have to always have it together and say, I've got this and smile and it's going to be okay. when I feel like absolutely everything around me is
Wow.
falling
Yeah.
apart. And so I think that was my first kind
Yeah.
of
Mhm.
layer
Yeah.
coming off, but unfortunately, there
Yeah.
were so many more
So
to
it sounds
come.
like, given what I asked, that all of a sudden things stopped working that well in what we call shock point on the Enneagram, when existence sends us one or a set of events that are specially designed to, to challenge our belief system, the fixation of our type, the passion of our type. And what I notice is that for threes who are true candidates to do inner work, the kind of thing that existence sends is always like, you don't control anything. Do you get it now? And you're not in charge. You're not making things happen. And apparently, you got the message right away.
I did for a minute, and then the ego stepped back in and said, "Put your big girl panties on, stop crying, and
Mm.
get it together." And so, so I kind of rallied a little bit, and then another season rolled around again. And I remember I
Mm.
had COVID and I was so sick. And it was so devastating to me that I was so, so sick. And I could count on one hand how many people actually
Wow.
checked on me. And it just made me incredibly sad because I had felt like I had sacrificed my life pouring into
Yeah.
so many people. And here I was, like, so ill, so sick. And none of those
Mm.
people reached out to check on me and see how I was doing. And I think that was the huge kind of like what lit the flame to kind of start this whole transformation and journey that I started to go on, because I was like, why, like, that it feels like there's no meaning here. Like, what am I doing, Um, and so I think just realizing all of the sacrifice and all of the investment and hard work I had done. And at the end of the day, it was like, no
It's
one really
almost, it reminds me a
cares.
little bit of like that person that worked for you that said, I don't feel like I really know you. It was almost like from the inside realizing, like, how come nobody's reaching out to me? How come nobody knows what's happening with me and knows me enough to show they care? It's sort of like realizing one aspect of that dimension of having that good image, kind of living through the work persona, even though I think with sexual threes, because they're so helpful and relational, and like we can hear in you, like how, you see people's potential, you're there to support them. There can seem like there's more of that connection, and yet, like from the point of view of you receiving, like of people knowing you, or you showing vulnerability or your feelings more in those relationships, they may not have really had that sense of deeper connection with you. And so it's amazing that you again felt that as a wake up call of like, whoa, what's going on here, that here I am, this person who cares so much and who's done all this for others, and when I'm at my lowest, there's nobody really there. Wow. And so then what did you do from there? How did that change you?
Or what happened? What started happening within you?
So then I started asking questions of just, why am I doing this? Like, what am I doing this for? What really matters to me? Who am I? And who am I really? Apart from just what I do, like my titles, how people see me, all of those things. Like, I started kind of having this crisis almost. And I was hitting these extreme points of burnout, of just like couldn't stop crying. And at one point I remember I was talking to you, B, and I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I don't know what to do. I feel trapped. I don't even know what I want, who I am. And you said, well, why don't you take a year off? And I was like, okay, that's not going to work. Like, that can't happen. And I was just thinking, yeah, in what world? And I even asked you, I was like, what would I even do? What would I do with my time for a year? And you were like, I don't know, maybe you would explore some things you've never gotten to explore before. And that felt like a foreign language to me. But it did plant this seed of like curiosity of like, maybe there is another part of me that I haven't met yet. And that's where I started. Um, and, I say it went all downhill from there, but went all downhill from there in a good
Yes,
way.
and
But
it's funny because I also remember what I said to you, which you may not remember, you may have blocked it out. I remember saying to you, "Well, have you ever thought of selling your business?" And I remember you stopped short and you said, "I've never had that thought before." Like, "No, I've never thought of that before." But it was a little bit like just trying to open some space of possibility for you. And again, it sounds like you needed someone to help plant that seed. And then, of course, so much
Mhm.
happened for you that, so many courageous things happened from there. But how did that seed get planted and grow, and what did you do from there?
It was, again, I think God realizes, with me, he's like, Jennifer, we have to like really take
To get
extreme
your
measures
attention.
with you. Um, yeah, you're not a great listener. But I think the huge catalyst was when I went to the inner work retreat with
Mm.
you guys in London. And I remember when I went to the very first professional workshop with you guys years ago, and y'all were talking about inner work, and I'm like, I don't even know what that means. Like, that sounds awful to me. And I remember I told you, B, I was like, I'm not ready for this inner work thing. Like, that sounds
Yeah.
kind of scary to me. And you were like, okay. And so it took me years, and then I'm like, okay, I think I'm kind of ready. And so I went to London, which was such a huge, I feel like it was like an explosion almost. And I had this really intense dream while I was there where there was an explosion in the dream. And now looking back on that, I'm like, okay, that makes a lot of sense, because there was kind of like this alchemy almost happening. I don't know. And so from that place, I came home from London, and I literally lost all motivation, desire, get up and go. And I couldn't do it. It was almost like every part of me had just gone away, of every part of, all right, get dressed, get ready, come on, go to work, you got to show up, all the things. And I'm just sobbing and crying. And I told my husband, I can't do it. Like, I can't even force myself to put my clothes on. I can't even force myself to reach out to the people on the team and check in, and all the things. I was like, I can't even do it. And it was almost like it had all been stripped away. And even if I told him, I said, even if I wanted to, I can't even, it's like I can't even make myself, that I can't even effort enough to do it. So I had to tell my team, guys, I have to take a year off. I just can't, I cannot show up. There's, I just can't. And I don't even know how to put it into words because, for most threes, it's like, no, you can
Right.
get it together. You can, but I
Mm.
couldn't. And I was so incredibly bored and just at home doing nothing. Like, and it was just the most foreign thing ever, and I felt so much shame and sadness around it because I'm like, what are people thinking? What are they thinking? And but I'm like, it doesn't matter because I can't, I have nothing to do. And so I, would like mop the floor, cook dinner. It was just like, okay, well, I'm here in the house. I would do yoga. I started meditating. I was journaling. I was going into my closet and creating like this little prayer closet. It's almost like I was going inside
Wow.
this cocoon almost, and retreating, and just, spending this isolated time in my home, um, where it was almost every part of me was being stripped away, and I kept apologizing to my husband, I kept apologizing to my kids, and I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like, I know I felt like I was just kind of worthless to be around because I wasn't myself anymore. It was just the most bizarre, hardest time of my life, but there was something inside of me that was like, you're safe. Like, keep going, stay here. You're cared for, you're loved. Um,
Mm.
it's okay. It's okay. And so I
Wow.
just stayed
That's
there.
amazing. And, my experience in London with you at the inner work retreat was I just experienced you getting in touch with the deeper you. Like I remember I learned things about you being with you at that retreat that I didn't know before. Like, oh wow, and so it kind of makes sense. And it's almost like because you were open, because you were sort of hearing the signs that the universe was bringing you, even if it, took some lessons that were hard. It's like the true self in you, the truer self, the essential you sort of took over, and said, this is
Mm.
more what you need and how you feel and who you are, even though it was scary. And I really appreciate the way you narrate your story, because it's like the ego keeps coming in saying, what will people think? Or what are you doing? Or you can't do this, or this isn't okay. And yet it sounds like you had, tapped into a deeper part of you that was expressing just through that lack of motivation, through that sense of being more in your emotions, through that sense of, I just can't do it, something that was actually really healthy and really positive. And I think for all the types on the growth path, sometimes when we start deconstructing the personality, or when our personality starts losing its power over us, it feels terrifying, because it feels like, wait a minute, and then who will I be? Or what do I have to hold on to? Or how can I be something other than what I've always known? And so I think the way you tell the story is so important for people to hear, and especially for threes, of course, because threes are, their personality is so oriented to what they're supposed to be in the world, and to working so hard, and to not ever stopping, and to not taking time off, or not just being. And so I really appreciate that that it's almost like you said, that the change happened to you, that your true self kind of gained this sort of momentum, where this inner voice, this inner movement was driving you, as opposed to the personality, which had lost power by that point.
Yes. And I even in that season, I even described, and I felt so dramatic saying it, but it was exactly how I felt. I was like, I am suffering. Like I feel like I'm in purgatory. I'm literally suffering. And it was so hard. It was so hard. I couldn't even, months and months would go by and I couldn't even go into any of my locations. I couldn't even step foot in without even feeling like sobbing, crying, because it's just like I could not do it. And I was suffering so bad, but it almost was like, well, just get back to what you were doing so you can stop suffering. But it was almost like there was this barrier there that wouldn't let me cross
Yeah.
back over, if that makes sense.
And I wonder if you were
So yeah.
feeling the deeper suffering that had always been there, but that the personality sort of covered over. It was sort of like the lid was blown off a little bit of the ego. And so it's almost like there's this deeper part of you that's saying, I'm going to suffer if you make me go back to work, or I'm suffering both because I want to go back to work and I can't, and the thought of being at work horrifies me. So it's almost like, and I like the way you say purgatory. And of course, you and your daughter came to my Dante and the Enneagram Path of Transformation course one year. And so you know about that. It is this kind of purgatory because it is this place in between, like the personality isn't working anymore. Like you're in touch with something deeper in yourself that's telling you that does not work for us anymore. That's I can't do it. But you haven't yet come to the place where it makes sense in a certain way, or it feels good. It still feels hard and bad and scary and all the things that we feel when we have to give up our defenses.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, many times this is a new kind of suffering, though. It's like suffering at ego, suffering because of ego, and not the basic suffering that a three would have in the past. Like, people are not approving of me, people don't see me, people don't value me. Although there, perhaps at that point it was a little bit of a mix of the two kinds of suffering, but the deeper one, the one that I think you refer to the most, is this suffering of the soul for having been so far away from truth. And that is so clear for me when I see you. Yeah, and you mentioned that it felt like going downhill from there, but it's actually, in my view, uphill. It's just that it feels like we're getting worse when we are getting better at that particular point of evolution. And that's because, as we try to explain in our model of levels of awareness at CP, it's because we are disidentifying from personality and therefore deconstructing things. Yeah, and you used an expression we sometimes use, which is things are being ripped off from me, and so that's usually how it feels, and it is very hard. But one of the universal laws says existence never gives us something that we can't bear. It's always within our capacity.
Mm.
And then I remember that you told me that you felt protected and loved. And I know you're talking about forces higher than us, but I also remember you said, much to my surprise, my husband was okay with that, and a few people that meant the world to me also did. So that sometimes comes as a surprise for a three who believes that people love me for what I do and not for who I am. But was it? Am I being accurate in what I'm saying or not?
Yes, it makes me want to cry just because, like, I feel so fortunate. My husband, such an amazing person. And he was just like, Jennifer, it's okay. Like, I got this. Like, you keep going. And my daughter even told me, she said, Mom, this is the most relatable I feel like you've ever been with me. And she's like, I love you. You've been an amazing mother to me, but this right now is the most relatable I've ever felt you've been. And that was like, oh my gosh, okay, it's okay. It's okay, Jennifer. And I will say, you know, when my son was in treatment, I remember they said relapse is part of recovery. And I would get so annoyed with that because, like,
That
I'm
sounds
like,
like
no, I
failure.
want us to be the exception to the rule because I don't want to go. Yeah, no, I don't want to, like, I don't want to have to go through
Yeah.
relapse to have recovery. And I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was, I think it was you, Uranio. You said something about, or maybe it was you, B. You said, you know, part of the growth path doesn't mean you're still going to be successful or, you know, be able to achieve and all of these things. It's not going to be just a new version of success, if that makes sense. And I was like, oh no, I don't know if I like that or not, you know. And and it's so true that one way or another sacrifices are going to be made. And one thing I've noticed that's been hard, but lots of those relationships in the past, in the beginning, they were like, oh, okay, yeah, you do you, Jen, take care of yourself, all the things, but you'll be back. You know, whenever I was like, I can't come back. I'm so sorry. I noticed that a lot of those relationships that were I felt were so important, kind of fell off because I wasn't that version anymore. And that's been hard to grieve. But at the end of the day, even if the business isn't, you know, visually as successful, or, you know, I'm not in the center of it all the things, even if all of those things, I still feel I am exactly where I'm supposed to be. And I even have this fear of I can't go back. I don't want to ever go back. It's like I've kind of started to see the other side, and
Yeah,
it's not worth
yeah,
it to me anymore. And so those sacrifices were worth it.
One of the things that you're saying that I want to highlight is I think threes, and maybe especially sexual threes, when they're really growing like this, when they're really getting in touch with a deeper part of themselves, they really need people in their life, and it can be a few that mirror their true self, right? That, you know, like what your husband said, what your daughter said, of saying, you know what, I feel like I can connect to you now and more than I ever have been before. I love who you're becoming, or this is great that you're doing. I think threes, I mean, all heart types, but especially threes, suffer from a lack of mirroring. And that is, you know, it's a childhood need of being seen and appreciated for who you really are. And I think threes, because in ego, they get so much positive reflection from society for their ego stuff. It's hard to give that up. Like you say, when you stop working, when you feel like I can't do that anymore, and I'm
Mhm.
getting clearer and clearer that I don't want to go back, it's like you need people around you that say you're on the right track, like good for you to do this courageous thing of giving up something
Mhm.
that in a worldly sense was successful but wasn't good for you, now that you're in touch with a deeper level of what's true for you.
right. Yeah, I also want to say that another way to see how true your path is that you were taken to the two arrows in a very clear way and in the right order that we say is ideal. Like you went to six first, questioning everything, including very important existential things. And then later on, you went to nine and you were literally stopped by life, and you had to be idle a little. And but I think that right now our listener is super curious to know how your story ended. Like, what happened with you at work? What's happening with you right now in relationships
That
and
was
you with yourself?
that was exactly where I was going, Uranio. So how are you doing now? What's happening, and what are you how are you making sense of what's happened and what's happening now?
So after I, kind of went through that really dark, dark, dark period, and I had your voice be in my head of like, me asking, well, what would I even do? And you were like, well, maybe we'll explore some things that, you've never done before. And I'm like, okay, well, I have all this freaking time here. So I'm like, how do I spend it? And, it kept coming to me like to start painting. And I've never painted in my life. And, of course, my first thought is no one would ever buy this. Like you go straight to monetizing
Yes.
something. And I'm like, who cares? It was almost like my what I couldn't understand that was happening inside of me, I was able to start expressing by just painting.
Wow.
And so I was just spending so much time, the things that were coming to me in my dreams, or just feelings of sadness, my childhood, all these things, I just started putting it on canvas, and expressing myself in that way. And it felt so vulnerable
Mm.
because, from an Enneagram 3 perspective, it's like, okay, are people going to think this is good or not? And then kind of judging myself and all the things. And so I kind of even took it a step further and I was like, who cares? Like, this is me. So I started hanging it up in visual places in my home where people could just see it, and of just no matter how, crappy it was,
Beautiful.
it was just like me. And I remember I got a spiritual director because I'm like, I need help and I need some sort of guidance or, support. And I don't remember what workshop it was, but I heard, you can do the psychological work, but there's spiritual work. And that was something that I was kind of not really tapping into. And so my spiritual director, she was so, so helpful. But I noticed that she had completed a dream work program. And I was like, they have that? That's incredible. So I go online and, there's this dream school program. It was a 2-year commitment, very intense, lots of work. And I was sitting in front of the application and I'm just sobbing. And my husband said, Jennifer, what are you waiting for?
Mm.
And I was like, I'm so scared because I've never done anything else. Like, I'm just so scared. And I don't even know what I was scared of. But so I applied and I started dream school. I graduate in December.
Wow.
So I've been in dream school for a couple of years. And so exploring like, Carl Jung, and Jungian psychology and dream analysis and archetypes and all of this kind of whole new world, that has just opened up, that I'm like, this is what my heart is connecting with. And whenever I first started dream school, of course people ask, so what are you going to do, or what are you going to do with this? Are you going to do dream session? I'm like, I have no idea. I may not even do anything with it. I'm just I called it, the past 2 years I've called my mystery school, where I'm just exploring the mystery and just loving it so much with creativity and spending time with my family and just learning and seeking and tapping into this kind of mysterious, crazy dream world, and so I I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm enjoying and loving just being. It's a really bizarre feeling. My husband, I'll actually say this to him sometimes. I'm like, I'm literally not thinking about what's tomorrow. I'm not thinking about what's next week. I'm just kind of chilling and enjoying today. It just feels like it's a very bizarre feeling for me. And even being in a place of like stuff doesn't really, I mean, of course, stuff is, nice, but where I'm just like, it's not that important to me anymore. And it's almost like I kind of have this trust and this faith that, okay, I've been brought this far. And all the things have been for my healing and my wholeness, and I can trust that whatever is coming, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
I can just trust that.
I noticed
So
that you don't even mention the business you had.
I know, I know.
And I noticed
What
that.
happened? What happened with it?
Mm.
It's still there. The business is still there. My husband is the one who does all the day to day and everything. Of course, so much has shifted and changed. And I think that is still to be revealed, what the next season of that looks like. But it's not who I am anymore. It's just, it was almost like it was synonymous. Jennifer is
Mhm.
Mhm.
this. Um, and if you asked me to describe any other aspects of myself apart from that, I wouldn't have been able to describe
Apart from the
anything because I'm
business
like,
that you
that's my
yeah.
life. Yeah, apart from the business. And now, oh my gosh, there's so many other pieces and parts, and I think there's more.
Beautiful. More to be revealed. I really want to highlight what I'm
Mhm.
hearing in your path, which is we often talk about how on a certain point in the path we have to surrender. Our ego can't figure it
Mm.
out anymore. We almost have to surrender and just be carried by life or something higher. And I really hear that in yours, that at some point you said, you know what, I'm just going to open up and see what happens. And we saw you recently at a retreat, and I was really touched by the stillness I feel in you. And it's like there you feel so
Mm.
grounded, but it's sort of like you're sort of residing in a kind of deep silence and like don't have to do anything. You're just it's like a really great example of how threes move into a different state of being when they really do this inner work and allow all these really scary things to happen and get more in touch with their emotions and their heart and what they really want at a deeper level. It's like there's this kind of um, peace and sense of just, I'm just sitting here being, I'm not doing. And I really feel that
Mhm.
when I'm around you now, and it's really beautiful. And I think it's
Mhm.
inspiring to other people on the path who are around you, because again, you're not trying to draw attention to yourself. You're not over there saying, "Hey, look at me! I've done some inner work." But it's almost like your being speaks volumes to the inner work of the three just by you sitting there not doing anything, just by you being who you are
Mhm.
now. And the heart that I feel in you, and the just kind of peaceful, caring presence that I feel that you are. And so I really, really appreciate you for your work and for being part of our community. And thank you for
Mhm.
talking with us today and helping people, I think, understand just a fascinating sense of what the type 3 growth path is.
Thank you. And I think, that last retreat that I was just at with you guys, I think another layer is peeling back because it's like I think what's revealed is revealed when you're
Yes.
ready to
Yes.
see it. And I do. There was a great teacher that I respect and love so much that told me, still a little self-absorbed, and I was like, you're right, you're right. And I think part of it is wanting to be good on this or do a good job on this
Mm,
path and be successful
I
on
love
this
that.
path. And so I've almost kind of gotten to a place of like, just be where your hands are, Jen. And, whatever is. And there's nothing to do, there's nothing to achieve. There's no ranking of success on this. And I will say, it's very triggering for an Enneagram 3 to see those freaking levels of awareness. Level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. It's like I just wanted to hold my middle finger up at it because I was like, this is like a 3 walking into a bar. There's levels to achieve here. It's like, oh, I hated it. I hated it. So I kind of have to throw all those levels out of the way. And I'm like, you know what? Who knows what lifetime, what level I'm going to be? Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I have many more lives to go before whatever. But
That's
yeah.
some good feedback, in addition to all that you're saying, which is so meaningful.
Yeah, sometimes the levels can be something to understand where we have been, not as a guide of where we are heading to, because that's dangerous for threes. That can become goals, right? Now, yeah, so I also want to thank you
Yes.
so much, Jennifer. I feel so much respect for you. And I'm wondering if one day you'll even do a garage sale of your art. No.
How fun would that be?
Although she's
Maybe
trying to
just
get away from
without,
monetizing. She's
yeah,
getting
just
away from
without
monetizing.
promotion or merchandising and without trying to attract people, just trusting that your inner work magnetically will attract the right people.
Yeah.
And then see what happens. But who am I to know? Just you don't need to do that, and please don't take it as a goal at all.
It's just so
Okay.
So,
beautiful to
yeah,
be in life right now and things feeling sacred,
yeah.
and having so much meaning to them. I'm so grateful for the sacred moments, and the sacred parts. And I just want to say thank you to both of you, because, I mean, you guys have been a major, major part of my journey. And I feel like, um, you guys have just been a really, really sacred piece of the unfolding, that I've been able to explore. So thank you guys so much. Even in moments, Uranio, when it feels harsh, I I'm like, you know what?
Uh,
It's the truth, and I'm so,
yeah.
so grateful, so grateful.
Thank you
Well,
so much, Jennifer.
thank you for your receptivity, and thank you for being you. And thank you for talking with us today. So that does it for us today for this episode of the Enneagram 2.0 podcast. Please join us again next time when we talk about all things Enneagram.